The night it happened, rain pressed against the windshield like 1,000 tiny warnings. I remember staring through the streaks of water, wipers flailing back and forth in a sad rhythm, and whispering one sentence under my breath, "Please let me be wrong." That was the night the lies stopped being little ripples and became a wave that knocked everything I knew off balance. But before that storm there was calm, a life so ordinary it almost feels borrowed now. My name is Marissa Lane. For 15 years I was the kind of woman who packed lunches before dawn, ironed shirts that weren't even wrinkled, and still believed love was a steady thing that didn't need watching. Ethan, my husband, worked as a project manager for a construction firm. Deadlines, clients, overtime, that was our third language. Our first was laughter. At least that's what I told myself. We lived in a modest house just outside Nashville, one of those cul-de-sacs where kids ran between driveways and sprinklers hummed in the evenings. The smell of cut grass always mixed with barbecue smoke in summer. It felt like safety. At 38 I didn't expect adventure. I expected stability. After all, we had built it together. A mortgage, 2 cars that always needed washing, and a golden retriever named Benny who followed me around like a furry conscience. Ethan used to call me his constant. "Mar," he'd say, brushing my shoulder when he left for work. "Don't ever change. You keep me grounded." I didn't plan on changing. But life has its own plans for who gets grounded. My best friend, Tessa, was practically a fixture in our home. We met at a volunteer event years back. She was the funny one, the kind who'd make light of everything. We'd sit at my kitchen table sharing coffee and stories about our weeks. She was divorced, witty, and a little too observant. Sometimes she'd tease me. "Girl, you've got the perfect setup. A husband who actually goes to work and a dog that listens better than most men." I'd laugh, not realizing how those words would reshape themselves later. At the time, working late was Ethan's anthem. He'd text around 7, sometimes 8. "Big project. Don't wait up." I'd heat the casserole again, half listening to the oven timer tick while Benny snored on the kitchen rug. Then I'd imagine his shoulders hunched over blueprints, his pen clicking like a metronome of responsibility. That picture kept me from feeling lonely. It started with something embarrassingly small. One Friday evening I stopped by his office with coffee and sandwiches, his favorite kind, turkey with Dijon and too much lettuce. His desk lamp still glowed through the frosted glass. When I knocked, the janitor opened instead. "Mr. Lane?" "Left about an hour ago," he said, leaning on his mop. I forced a smile. Oh, maybe he went to grab something. Driving home, the coffee went cold between my knees. A reasonable voice told me to ignore it. "He probably met a client," I whispered, though no one was listening. Later, Ethan came in humming, smelling faintly of rain and someone else's perfume. "Sweet. For not mine. You went somewhere nice?" I asked lightly. He paused just long enough for doubt to sprout. "Stopped by a supplier. Their offices always reek of air freshener." Smile. Deflect. Kiss on the forehead. I wanted to believe him, so I did. Belief is easier than breaking your life open. After that, little things turned uncanny. Receipts from downtown restaurants tucked into his jeans. Lip balm that wasn't mine in the console. His shirt collars held the faintest shimmer of glitter, like ghosts of someone else's evening. Every time Tessa visited, she'd sit where he normally did, folding her legs neatly. "You good, Mar? You look tired." I'd brush it off. "Just work." And Ethan's schedule. She'd nod sympathetically, sip her wine, and change the subject. One afternoon, while scrolling through photos on her phone, pictures of decor ideas, we landed on a restaurant shot. Dim lighting, a glass of red wine clearly held by a male hand. "Cute place," I said. "When'd you go there?" She flicked to the next photo too fast. "Oh, last month. With a group from the gym." Something about the reflection in that wine glass, broad shoulders in a blue dress shirt, unsettled me all evening. Doubt became a quiet companion. It followed me while folding laundry, while typing reports for my job at the insurance office, while feeding Benny. Still, I told myself, don't turn into one of those suspicious wives. Trust. But trust, once cracked, echoes like a marble in a bowl. It never sits still. 2 weeks later, a late-night storm rolled in. Thunder flattened the sky. Lightning flickered across the living room windows. Ethan texted at 7:04 p.m., running late. "This client is driving me crazy." I thumbed back. "Drive safe. Soup's on the stove." No reply. An hour passed. The The soup dulled to sludge and Benny's ears twitched every time a car splashed through the puddles outside. Something inside me, call it instinct or the residue of all those tiny lies, quietly stood up. I grabbed my keys. The drive downtown took 15 minutes, long enough for guilt to start whispering, "You're paranoid, Marissa." But another voice, sturdier, said, "Truth doesn't mind being seen. Lies do." His firm's building loomed out of the mist, parking lot half empty, lights flickering. I recognized Ethan's black sedan under a street lamp. "Okay," I murmured. "He's still here." Then I saw it, the hum of headlights pulling up in front of the door. A white SUV. Familiar. The wipers swept, revealing a shape I knew too well. Tessa's curls, copper under the dash glow. She idled a moment. My stomach went weightless. The office door opened and Ethan stepped out holding his briefcase, glancing over his shoulder like a teenager sneaking away from detention. He jogged through the rain and slid into her passenger seat. Her passenger seat. The SUV eased into traffic, wipers flashing. I sat perfectly still as raindrops drummed the roof. Some part of me wanted to flash my lights, honk, make it stop, but the rest of me watched with chilling clarity. I whispered, "Of course it's you." The car turned toward the River District where all the late-night restaurants were. Gone like the end of a fairy tale you didn't agree to. I don't remember driving home. Only the steady sound of Benny's bark when I opened the door, and my hands clutching the steering wheel long after the engine died. I set my phone on the table. It buzzed 30 minutes later. "Sorry I'm late, sweetheart. Rain's insane tonight." I stared at the text, feeling a strange calm. Then I typed, "Be safe. I'll see you soon." And I smiled. A small, terrifying smile. Because now I knew enough to start a plan. That night I didn't sleep. The clock kept ticking, each hour feeling longer than the last. 12:04, 1:17, 2:42. Ethan finally crept in around 3. His shoes squeaked from the rain, his shirt half untucked. "Hey," he whispered, surprised to see the living room lamp still burning. "Why were you up?" "I couldn't sleep," I said, voice careful. "Long night," he exhaled, dropping his briefcase. "Don't ask. Architects changed plans again. We had to redo the entire structural grid." He kissed my forehead. His lips were cold. I could taste copper. Not blood, guilt maybe. When he went to shower, I opened his briefcase. Folders, receipts, a folded napkin with pale pink lipstick. I slid it back before the shower stopped. Lies have texture. You start to feel them under your fingertips. In the days that followed, I turned detective in my own home. Quiet, polite, invisible. I synced his car's Bluetooth history, noted new phone numbers marked work. I visited Tessa twice, pretending everything was fine. Her apartment smelled like the same jasmine perfume that had haunted Ethan's colors. Each time I inhaled, my stomach twisted but my face stayed trained. "You okay, girl? You look tense," she'd say, pouring us wine. "Just busy," I'd answer, steady, learning to wield calm like a weapon. Ethan's stories kept mutating. Emergency site meetings, clients flying in, surprise appraisals. He grew affectionate again, overly so. Flowers at the office, text hearts midday. It almost worked, that blizzard of attention. Almost. But genuine love doesn't arrive as an apology bouquet. It just is. And now I could smell counterfeit affection from a city away. By week 3 I knew I needed proof. Words wouldn't stand up when everything blew open. Evidence would. So I planned quietly, methodically. I downloaded a dashboard camera app on my phone. Record on voice. If I couldn't follow them, I'd at least hear. Then one Wednesday fate helped. He left his second phone. A sleek black one I'd never seen. Charging in the kitchen. The screen lit up with a text. "See you at 7, kiss emoji." There it was, in plain letters that hummed louder than a confession. That single text sobered me. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't breaking plates. I was drafting. I made lists. What to keep, what to lose, what to expose. First, I printed every suspicious receipt, every text, each bank transaction he'd forgotten to hide. Then I looked at the bouquet he'd sent me that morning. White lilies, brittle and too sweet, and decided the universe sometimes serves irony in perfect symmetry. He thought I was naive. So I invited both of them to dinner. A Friday 2 weeks later. A thank you meal, I said, to celebrate Ethan's long project finally finishing. Tessa texted, "You sure? You look exhausted." "But sure, I'll come. Miss you." That miss you burned worse than the betrayal itself. I spent the afternoon making pot roast, his favorite, and setting the table with our wedding china, untouched since Christmas. I even picked out a playlist, soft piano, the kind that keeps people calm while the world rearranges behind them. When Ethan came home, I smiled. Tessa's joining us, I said lightly. She's been such a support while you've been busy. He hesitated, the smallest flinch. Oh, good. Been a while since we had her over. Yes, I said. A while. At 7 on, Tessa's perfume preceded her down the hall, jasmine and something sharper. She walked in with her practiced grin and a bottle of red wine. I come bearing peace offerings, she chirped. My throat tightened. Perfect timing. We sat. We ate. They exchanged glances that darted like nervous birds. I served slices of roast and listened to my pulse stack up inside my ears. Halfway through dessert, blueberry cobbler, her favorite, I reached into my pocket and laid my phone on the table, screen down. That phone held photos. Him slipping into her SUV under that street lamp. Do you know why I really wanted dinner tonight? I asked quietly. Tessa blinked, spoon halting midair. Because you love to feed people? Ethan chuckled awkwardly. Marissa, what's going on? I flicked the phone face up. The image glowed between us. 2 figures in the rain, unmistakable. Silence. The piano soundtrack felt suddenly cruel. Tessa gasped first. Wait, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked, my voice strangely stable. Because that looks like my husband and my best friend. Ethan's face strained. Honey, listen. No, I said, shaking my head softly. You listen. For months I listened. To every excuse, every late night, every deadline. So tonight you get to listen. I slid a small manila folder toward them. These are copies. Restaurant receipts. Texts. Bank charges for your little getaways. He barely looked. Tessa whispered. Marissa, I didn't mean to hurt you. That's the thing about meaning, I said. Once you act, meaning doesn't matter. My hands weren't trembling anymore. They were empty. For minutes no one spoke. The clock filled the space, loud as thunder. Finally, Ethan pushed back his chair. So what now? You want money? Divorce. I smiled in a way that startled even me. No. Not yet. I want dessert. I spooned another bite of cobbler, tasted none of it, then added, I've already spoken to someone about selling the house. Papers will arrive Monday. We'll settle quietly, Ethan. Dignity's all we've got left. Tessa stared, tears streaking through her makeup. And you, I said softly, will never step foot here again. Some things don't get a second draft. No shouting. No dramatics. Just 3 adults sitting under the slow collapse of trust. When they left, the only sound was the door catching on its frame, like even the hinges felt awkward about closing. That night, I washed the dishes, every plate placed back into its cabinet like reset buttons. I sat by the window watching the rain return, lighter this time, almost soothing. Benny rested his head on my knee. I told him everything. Dogs never interrupt, they just breathe with you. Somewhere past midnight, I wrote my name on new paperwork, the registration of a small home staging business I'd been too scared to start. Just Marissa Interiors. It felt poetic that my first act of revenge was creation, not destruction. I didn't text Ethan. He didn't come home. When dawn pushed the clouds apart, I realized, peace doesn't arrive as celebration. It arrives quietly, like the silence that comes after the truth has been spoken. Monday morning arrived crisp and too bright for the weekend that had just ended. I brewed coffee, set out 2 cups by habit, then laughed softly and poured one down the sink. Some rituals need burying before they start to rot. My phone vibrated, messages stacked like debris. Ethan's name, Tessa's name, unknown numbers from mutual friends. I haven't opened any of them yet. The truth, once freed, moves through a community faster than gossip ever could. Around noon I called our mutual friend Charlotte, who happened to work at Ethan's firm. My voice was steady. Could you let HR know that Ethan and I are separating? I'll send the mailing address for paperwork. A pause, then Charlotte, gentle but curious. I already heard something. Did he really? Yes, I said. No need to narrate the rest. Silence has a way of finishing the sentence for you. By evening the story had oxygen. Friends, neighbors, even brothers-in-law started reaching out, each of them walking the fine line between concern and curiosity. I remained polite but brief. The more I didn't explain, the more controlled I felt. Tessa, however, didn't go quietly. She posted a photo that night. An old picture from our volunteer days with a caption about loyalty sometimes getting mistaken for betrayal. The comments lit up like fireworks. I stared at it for a long minute, then turned off notifications. Let her spin her version. Stories only hold power until evidence arrives. The next morning, evidence did. Charlotte sent me a message. You should come into the office. The partners need a word. With you, not him. Curiosity wrestled with reluctance, but I drove downtown anyway. Same building, same parking lot, same cold fluorescent light flickering above the entry. Inside, Charlotte led me to the conference room. 3 partners sat there, expressions stiff as pressed suits. Mrs. Lane, one began. We realize this is personal, but Mr. Lane's conduct has created complications for the firm. Company vehicle usage, expense reports, false overtime claims. I blinked. False overtime. So those client dinners weren't just emotional betrayal. They were on company time. He's under review, another partner added. We wanted to confirm dates directly from you if you're comfortable. I handed them the same folder I had shown them at dinner. Everything's in there. Use what you need. Walking out, my heels clicked against marble as if each step stamped a period at the end of a very long run-on sentence. That afternoon I ran into both of them, publicly, unexpectedly. I had stopped by the local market to buy groceries when Tessa's laughter tripped against the shelves 2 aisles away. She looked up first. Her face flushed the color of bruised roses. Ethan stood beside her, trying to seem invisible and failing. Marissa, he said, almost pleading. Can we talk? I examined the jar in my hand. Marinara on sale. About what? Nutritional facts. He sighed. Please don't do this here. But I wasn't doing anything. Standing calmly was enough. Our small town works on unspoken channels. 3 other shoppers had paused, pretending to compare cereal brands while their ears tilted toward us. I'm not doing anything, Ethan. You did. Tessa placed a trembling hand on his arm. We didn't mean for it to happen like this. Kept my voice even. That's the problem. You didn't mean for it to happen at all, yet it did, repeatedly. She swallowed, eyes glossed. People make mistakes. And consequences follow, I said. I assume you've already heard from his firm. Ethan's mouth tightened. You told them. I told the truth. He looked away. Truth, when it finally lands, doesn't make a sound. It just removes the air between people. I walked past them toward the checkout, hearing the low hum of whispers in my wake. I didn't look back. At home, peace was still new enough to startle me. The house sounded different without constant phone pings or Ethan's hurried footsteps. I rearranged furniture, not out of necessity but to reclaim space, turning it from ours into mine. 3 days later, an envelope arrived by courier. His resignation letter. A brief note clipped inside. You got what you wanted. It took me 5 seconds to reply. Only the truth. When news spread fully, about the firm, the affair, the falsified reports, people stopped whispering and started understanding. Tessa withdrew from social volunteering. Gossip says she moved to another city, maybe Texas. I didn't check. What surprised me most was the quiet support I received. Women I barely knew dropped by with casseroles, notes that read, "Been there." Compassion, I learned, doesn't always arrive dressed as pity. At our cul-de-sac picnic that Sunday, someone muttered, "He always seemed decent." Someone else answered, "She deserved better." I smiled politely, grateful that small sentences could now live between air freshener and grilled corn without piercing me. Once legal papers started moving, I turned toward my tiny business, the one I had registered after that dinner. Within a month, I staged my first home for sale. A small 2-bedroom with peeling wallpaper and great light. I remembered moving furniture with Benny staring from the doorway, his tail patting the floor in approval. The work grounded me. There was satisfaction in arranging a space until everything balanced, order returning where chaos had lived. Maybe that's why I loved it. It allowed me to practice peace physically until it seeped inward. Financially, it was tight. Emotionally, tighter. Nights were the hardest. Silence amplified memories. The first time I slept diagonally across the bed, I laughed aloud, maybe for the first time in months. I began documenting small moments. Fresh paint drying, the first client handshake, Benny sleeping on staged couches as if to approve the decor. Those simple frames told a different story, one of stillness earned. One afternoon, nearly 3 months after the confrontation, I received another letter from Ethan via the lawyer. Apology paragraphs mixed with self-pity. I read it twice, then folded it with care and slid it beneath the wedding photo I still hadn't taken off the shelf. Not forgiveness. Just filing the past where it belonged. Recorded, closed. In September, my business landed a real contract staging house for a new development. It felt poetic. Ethan used to manage construction and now I would give those houses warmth. Life's symmetry can sting and soothe in the same breath. The first open house drew a crowd. As I watched strangers compliment the layout, I realized my revenge hadn't been exposure or humiliation. It had been growing. Surviving beautifully becomes its own declaration. It was late that evening when I finally sat on my porch, tea cooling between my palms, Benny at my feet. The cicadas started their soft chorus and the world felt freshly edited. I thought about that rainy night under the office lights, the moment I saw her car. I had believed that discovery marked the end of my story. It turned out to be the introduction to a better one. Still, some scars stay luminous, reminders rather than regrets. When the wind shifted, the jasmine plant by the porch released a faint scent, so like Tess's perfume that I almost laughed. Even betrayal, when processed long enough, leaves behind an aroma that's tolerable, faint proof you've outlasted it. The following months moved like a season I hadn't known before, part winter, part spring. The cold was still inside me, but something green kept pushing through. Divorce court was unimaginative, gray files, polite voices, fluorescent light shaking across worn linoleum. Ethan avoided my eyes. I answered questions with the same calm precision I had once used when measuring flour for his favorite cobbler. The judge nodded, papers were signed, and 15 years condensed into a series of typed lines and witnesses' initials. Outside, the air carried the faint smell of rain again. A poet might have called it closure. I called it oxygen. That evening, I packed the last of my things into the back of an old pickup I'd borrowed from a neighbor. Benny jumped into the passenger seat. He always preferred the front row. I left behind what couldn't fit or didn't need to: Ethan's golf trophies, framed memories too heavy to carry, and the version of myself that believed loyalty alone could keep love alive. Driving across the bridge that split our side of town from downtown, I felt that strange combination of fear and lightness you get when you toss a stone into deep water. You lose something solid but gain ripples that move outward forever. The rented apartment was small, perched above a bakery that woke me each dawn with the smell of yeast and cinnamon sugar. The walls were thin, the paint uneven, but when sunlight hit the windows the place glowed like forgiveness. I set up a work table in the corner. Paint samples, fabric swatches, a laptop still wrapped in warranty plastic. Just Marissa Interiors was open for business. At first, clients came through word of mouth. One after another, women, most with their own small heartbreak stories, found me. I think they sensed it, that quiet understanding only those who've rebuilt themselves can exchange. Work filled the hours, but it also healed them. Every time I arranged flowers in a staged dining room, I thought of all the dinners that had ended in silence. And every time I set a lamp just right, I turned darkness into something gentle on purpose. By winter I found a rhythm. I walked Benny every morning past the park, nodded at shop owners who had learned my story through small-town osmosis but treated me with respect now. One snowless January afternoon, I stopped by a coffee stand I'd never visited before. The barista, a man about my age with tired eyes and neat hands, recognized my business logo embroidered on my sleeve. "You did that house on Maple Street, right? The one with the blue front door?" he asked. I smiled, surprised. "You saw it. I delivered coffee for their open house," he said, then added quietly, "My ex and I split last year. That place felt peaceful. Guess you know what you're doing." We ended up talking 10 minutes too long, steam rising between us like punctuation. I walked away lighter. It wasn't romance. It was reassurance that kindness still existed in the wild, unplanned world beyond betrayal. People sometimes equate revenge with destruction, but I've learned it can be reconstruction instead. The reshaping of pain into something survivable, even lovely. My quiet dinner confrontation had given back my dignity. The rest of this rebuilding was giving back my joy. I stopped checking social media. The silence was a better room to live in. I reconnected with my sister whom I'd drifted from. We spent hours cooking together, laughing at nothing grand, just reclaiming ordinary moments. I realized redemption doesn't need applause. It just needs repetition, the daily practice of peace. On the anniversary of that dreadful rainy night, I visited the river district. The same street lamps still hummed, casting the same cone of light onto wet pavement. For a brief second, memory replayed Ethan jogging through the rain toward that SUV. But this time my chest didn't tighten. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, for showing me who I was strong enough to become." Benny barked once as if to agree, and we walked off toward a food truck where the smell of fried dough cut through the damp air. It tasted like beginnings disguised as dessert. Now when rain starts against my windows, I don't think of betrayal anymore. I think of renewal, how water prunes away what's dead and makes room for growth. Sometimes we realize too late that loyalty to someone else can mean disloyalty to ourselves. I had to learn that lesson slowly with every late night alone and every brave morning after. If this story finds someone standing in the doorway, wondering whether to keep believing promises that arrive by text message instead of truth, listen to the quiet inside you. It always knows first. Would you have stayed calm like I did that night, or would you have stormed straight into that rain? Tell me in the comments. I read every word. And if my story touched you today, remember to subscribe to Sister Ruth Tells All, where every voice holds a truth, and every truth teaches us how to begin again.